I'm Audie Cornish. This is The Assignment, and today we're talking about the Oscars. My guest is Megan Cruz, a TikTok movie critic who is part of the up-and-coming world of parasocial critique.
Okay, the time has finally come. I've put this off for far too long. It is time for me to tell you my top 20 films of 2025.
Because of the internet, it is incredibly interactive, and the audience definitely feels like they are a part of it, and they do in a lot of ways drive the conversation.
She's the perfect person to talk about this year's Oscars because it's been great for films and weird for discourse, like how Timothée Chalamet went from frontrunner to dodging hits from ballet dancers and opera singers in the last week of his Oscar campaign. Then there's the Best Picture duel between the crowd pleasers from the same studio, Warner Brothers' Sinners and One Battle After Another. And why, just as we're all going to the theater, Hollywood is worried about its future. This is a fun one, so stick with us.
I've kind of tried to create a path of embracing the title of critic, which not everyone does in the space. Some people.
Oh, interesting.
It's like a lot of there's a niche for everything, and some people like to do more historical content. Some people do like quick lists or like kind of watch, this is what came out this week, list of 5 movies. Here's my like ranking of order of which I'd recommend seeing them, which really prioritizes the short format. But that's not. I don't really focus so much on that, mainly because I can't stop talking, but also because
I don't know what that's like. I don't know what that's like. But it's, and I shouldn't, when I think back to the height of Twitter, there was a lot of dialogue that happened there, right? And that happened in bite-sized amounts. I think what I'm getting at is you are, by nature of the format and where you do your work, in dialogue with your audience in a way that like a newspaper type might not have been 25 years ago.
That's an incredible way to put it, honestly, because that is what it is. It's a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of like I feel like Siskel and Ebert definitely like laid a groundwork of what modern film discourse and criticism is now. But because of the internet, it is incredibly interactive, and the audience definitely feels like they are a part of it, and they do in a lot of ways drive the conversation, which is interesting. And I do think that the internet has created a space that has become a lot more diverse, and I don't want to say like fully egalitarian, but that was one of the reasons why I was drawn to TikTok initially, is because even on YouTube, a lot of the space was dominated by a typical like film critical kind of stereotype. It's a lot of like straight white men leading the conversation.
I was about to say, are you trying to say dudes? Just say dudes.
Yeah, just dudes. Just
movie dudes. Yeah, it's
movie
okay.
Dudes. And we love them, but it's nice to have them.
God rest his soul. He never heard my takes. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
He never had to deal with my thoughts, and it's an interesting thing, because if you look a few years ago at the like hashtag Oscars so white or whatever, Hollywood heard directly from everyone, not just about how they felt about the films, but on the business itself. And so you're the perfect person to talk this year. I feel like last year I talked to someone at like the New Yorker or something, right? We were talking about Oscar campaigns, and people were talking, the whole idea of the campaign, which in the post-Weinstein era, the person who really fired that up for better and mostly worse, we are now living in that time. And each year there is a horse race aspect to the awards circuit that far more the average people are like tuned into, kind of who's up, who's down of that horse race. When you look at this year, what are the films leading that pack?
There isn't one clear frontrunner in a lot of the categories. I feel like we have the juggernaut that is One Battle After Another, that a lot of mainstream critics and pundits very much favor. And it is a powerhouse. Obviously, Paul Thomas Anderson is right in the sweet spot of the age and career place that the Academy just loves.
Yes, an auteur who gave us Punch Drunk Love, I think might have been my favorite. Magnolia people love, otherwise known as...
People love Magnolia.
The good Tom Cruise movie is what I call it in my mind. But people like Yeah, they like him. He's like a director's director, and he hasn't gotten it before. So the campaign and the narrative around it, let's just use that word, is like, isn't it time to give this guy for this original? So that's the conversation there. And people also like Leonardo DiCaprio, and all the people involved in it are sort of liked figures.
For sure.
And that makes a difference. And that leads us to the Warner Brothers, we should say, parent company, asterisk, their other favorite, which is Sinners, which is now most awarded in terms of nominations in history.
Yeah, it was really incredible to see all of those nominations rolling in. I think Sinners, it is at a disadvantage for a couple of reasons, which is really unfortunate. Sinners is such an incredible film, being a horror film especially.
Yeah. 1930s vampire Southern Gothic with a lot of music. There's a lot of elements against it that in the past people would not check the box next to any of those things and call them prestige.
Exactly. Horror films in particular have just been generally ignored. There are countless performances, like Toni Collette in Hereditary is an incredible performance that was just completely ignored. It's debatable what you classify as a horror film, but less than 10 horror films in history have ever been nominated, even just nominated for Best Picture. Mm-hmm. The earliest is The Exorcist by William Friedkin, which incredible film, very deserving. So like being in the horror genre, it already is like fighting an uphill battle. But being the cultural juggernaut that it was when it came out, like literally just permeating not just the critical space, but having such a massive impact on mainstream audiences and like consuming the entire cultural conversation for such a long time, despite the fact that it clearly wasn't primed to be an awards runner coming out. I think it was in March.
March, like late February. It was giving Black History Month. It was giving like, let's put this out because this did well for Black Panther. And I'm like, how much more does Ryan Coogler have to do for Hollywood to prove? He's given you a boxing movie. He revived a franchise. He gave you a Marvel film. All these things are clearing the $1 billion mark. What more is there to give? Yes. And even then, the questioning about his deal even was amazing. People coming out of the woodwork to kind of imply he didn't deserve to negotiate from a position of power.
No, I mean, especially for a director who is the only director whose Marvel film has been nominated for Best Picture. Like, despite all of the accolades, like all of the money, let's be honest, that the MCU has made, no one has come close to bringing it that close to critical acclaim as Ryan Coogler. And it genuinely, like, his career is astounding. This film is astounding. The way he spoke about the filmmaking and his dedication to technique is, I think, on the same level as Christopher Nolan. And the huge push that Christopher Nolan got to, obviously his film came out at the peak moment to maximize box office and retain relevancy into the award season. And these huge campaigns talking about like the way they filmed for IMAX cameras and all of the specific technology used in the film, which again, like is great. Christopher Nolan, we need as many advocates in this industry as we can for people championing the technique and the artistry that is required to make these incredible movies and is not being preserved or valued at the same rate that it used to be. But Ryan Coogler did all of that the same. And he equally prioritized emphasis on cutting edge technology as well as like the artistic integrity of his vision and
getting performances out of his cast that are remarkable. And the reason why I talk all this is because these awards, in a way, they're about artistic merit. That is true. But they're also in a way about how Hollywood wants to be seen in any given moment. And this is one of the rare years where it feels like what they think about themselves and what they like is also what we like what the movie-going public likes. People went to the theater and saw Sinners on purpose. They went and saw one battle after another. They went and it wasn't like a bunch of films that people were like, I don't know, I didn't see it. Did you see it? I'll get around to it. It wasn't that kind of year.
No, I genuinely think that this is one of the best lineups for Best Picture that we've had in a while. Like, there are favorites that I wish would have made it in, but I feel like as someone who pays attention to these things, like what you're speaking to is something I've talked about countless times about the fact that I think the Oscars in general, people view them as like Best Picture must be some kind of objective metric for like the best movie of the year, which is completely impossible. But I think the more important issue is that it's more of like an anthropological record and speaks to like the cultural moment of where we're at any given time.
And so some years that's Driving Miss Daisy against Do the Right Thing.
Yes, exactly.
Some years that's Crash.
Yes.
And you're just like,
exactly.
What? Why is this happening? Is this the bad place? And then some years it's this, where even my friends who want to sort of fight about like Marty Supreme, which we'll talk about, One Battle at Sinners is the great. I'm like, I'm just glad y'all are all talking about this. I'm glad you actually saw these films, but that gets at a point that is percolating, the clouds, let's say, rumbling around. This was the year that Hollywood got to say, look at us streaming. Like, we're back. People went back to physical theaters. We were nice to our auteur directors. We gave them money. We gave them independence. And look what we hath wrought. And in the meantime, they were also terrified that Netflix might buy our parent company, WBD. Some people might look at Warner Brothers this year having 2 in the Best Picture running and just leading and see a last hurrah. I think that there's a meta dialogue going on about Hollywood itself, which is like, is this version of us, the version we feel most proud of, up and coming stars, well-known favorites, up and like fantastic auteurs coming out of studios, over?
It's not only a valid question, I think it's an important one, because obviously, I mean, like the 90s cultivated this like kind of idol worship of the idea of an auteur indie director. And as much as like that has been great for fostering interest in the arts, I do think that this idea of an artist as somebody who is like untouchable and better than us is a dichotomy that people are struggling with right now, as we are able to like see people. The internet gives us unprecedented access to celebrities and creatives of all kinds, and so it kind of like shatters the illusion a little bit. But I think the illusion needs to be shattered, and I think that the streaming industry has been disruptive in a lot of ways that I don't particularly love, but I do think that it is also acted as kind of humbling for a lot of people to realize that it is few and far between, like the people that will show up for someone just based on like a name when you're on streaming. And it is way more actually about a film like K-pop Demon Hunters that breaks through kind of at random because audiences find them and love them. I mean, this is kind of what happened a couple of years ago with Everything Everywhere All at Once. Again, another movie that not at all predicted to be by the studio that distributed it or anyone else to be relevant. But the word of mouth campaign, the way that audiences loved this movie so much, it was like one of the most organic Oscar wins I feel like I've ever seen. And I feel like we're definitely in that age right now. And it is thanks to streaming. Streaming is a double-edged sword in a lot of ways, but I do think it definitely gives the audience a little bit more control in terms of guiding the conversation.
And as a person who for a time was like, leave my house, why? Like I was, I'm not going to lie, I was on board because I had little kids. I had a baby. I was like, what do you want me to do? Yeah, like I'm sitting at home and watching Dune 45 or whatever. It's fine. And then I watched Frankenstein, the Guillermo del Toro film with Jacob, is it Elordi, who's now in Wuthering Heights. And I was like, oh, this is underwhelming. Like, this is a director who I've interviewed. I love his films, and they are so dynamic with the set design and all of these things. And on my television, it didn't really feel great. It didn't quite work. And it was a good little reminder to me, you know, somebody who's been a little reluctant, that the fact that these directors are leaning into the IMAX and the multiple film formats and all, they're trying to bring me back, and like, it's working. They're doing stuff that is bringing me back.
I do think that it's like, especially young audiences, like we're seeing a resurgence of Gen Z being interested. And I do think it's like, it's an important pushback because again, the double-edged sword of streamers, you have CEOs like Netflix's Ted Sarandos having conversations about how, you know, they internally have conversations about second screen viewing is I think what they call it, where they engineer their programming with the understanding that a lot of their audience is distracted while watching it. And they create shows where they have to, you know, say out loud the plot point and what's happening multiple times.
It's written in the dialogue.
Just banking on audiences not paying attention and not retaining that. And I think that as we're kind of inundated with more content all the time, audiences are definitely like, hey, whoa, like I need a breather. And the cinema, ironically, like my parents, you know, back in the 90s would shudder to think that the cinema is actually kind of like almost like a meditative like ritual for a lot of people now where you're able to put your phone down. You're able to just go and absorb a piece of art. It's weird to talk about it as though it's like the same thing as walking through a museum, but I do think it's like a comparable artistic endeavor.
Let's get into it. Let's get into the Marty Supreme of it all because Timothée Chalamet has become this year's campaign narrative discourse lightning rod.
Oh, so succinctly and wonderfully put yet again.
I don't know if that's how you say it. So for people who don't know, Marty Supreme is about, he plays Marty Mauser, who is this like ping pong prodigy. And it is basically, if anyone's seen Uncut Gems, because it's a Safdie film, it's like that with Timothée Chalamet. It's like a person who is frantic and intense and self-sabotaging, moving their way through a community. In this case, I think it's sort of like a Jewish community in New York. And it's all about his performance. That is the film. There's other things great about the film. The casting is good. The costumes are good. But you're really there to see Timothée Chalamet act in an enjoyable, intense way, frenetically for many minutes.
Yeah, it's very character driven.
Outside of that, it's his performance, air quotes, outside of that, promoting the film that has become a problem. So give me a description of some of the like viral stunts he's done that even got us to this point.
So Marty Supreme, it kind of entered the scene with a bang. Feels not even as dramatic as enough. It really, they came out of the gate understanding that they wanted to orchestrate conversation around this conversation and around this film. And I think that they did so with the understanding that some of the conversation would not be good, which is complementary to the themes of the film. But it's interesting because this is an A24 film. So A24,
which is the studio of the moment. If there's like a good movie you've seen in the last 2 years, it's come from A24, including Everywhere, Everything All at Once, or Hereditary, or like the list goes on and on. But they drop it at Christmas, which is the time when you drop a film because you think you're in award season. Right?
That's
You're
right.
like, this is a good thing we have.
Yeah. Well, and they spent so much money on this marketing campaign. I mean, justifiably so, turns out. They had a blimp flying throughout LA that said Marty Supreme on it. They had that initial viral marketing campaign where they faked a Zoom call of Timothée Chalamet on a Zoom call with a bunch of marketers talking about these outlandish things that he wanted to do as a joke. It was very planned ahead of time.
When I think Uncut Gems, Adam Sandler, Tiff, standing ovation, shwap! And then when I think Marty Supreme, what happened at the New York Film Festival, right? We can't let this movie down.
But then as it went on and he gave more interviews, and obviously he has a very public like relationship, and when they're on red carpets, a lot of people are starting to perceive him as very, I mean, even a couple of years ago, I believe when he was doing a Complete Unknown press, he was, very outspoken about he wants to be great. He wants to be one of the greatest, admitting out loud that he wants an Oscar.
Award, he just said, hey, everybody, I know this is not a cool thing to say, but I want to be one of the greats. Then he name checks 2 actors who were known for winning multiple acting awards back to back, Viola Davis and Daniel Day-Lewis. And, it's interesting. There is a thing with Hollywood and young men. They love an ingenue all day. You know what I mean?
God.
They're like, Hatha Lawrence, Emma, like, love it. you acting older than you are in a thing, because I've seen some of these women won things that I'm like, you were miscast. I don't even know why you were in this. But they love it. With the young men, unless you're British, it's a tough road, or you have to be older. And there's something about what he's trying to do right now as a young American male actor saying, I'm on a path, come with me. He's doing like a parasocial version of growth, and being okay with how dumb and theater kid it looks, like Anne Hathaway could never. Like,
oh my God,
no woman could get away with what Timothée Chalamet is doing in his thirst.
It's fascinating because he seems to be I mean, like, honestly, it's interesting. You're absolutely, I completely agree. Like, everything you're saying, the Academy loves young women who accept their accolades in a quiet, understated fashion. They love a very young girl who played a disenfranchised young girl in a film who plays the part exceptionally well. They love an esteemed actor who probably should have won an Academy Award 15 years ago.
Exactly.
They love to give somebody like that an Oscar.
Delroy Lindo, it's your time. Yeah,
exactly. But they really don't. And it's interesting because it seems to be reflected back in the general audience right now. Timothée Chalamet is increasingly, it's interesting, my last video that I made was not a defense of Timothée Chalamet, but really trying to contextualize the conversation around the recent discourse, is a polite way of putting it, around his comments around ballet and opera. And by his comments, I mean like a throwaway comment that he made at the end of a larger conversation about actually how the film industry is in danger, not any of those
This was at a CNN town hall with him and Matthew McConaughey, another person sort of known for speaking his mind. And Chalamet, the son of an arts family, mom, sister did ballet. I think he lived in like artist subsidized housing in New York and went to the Fame High School, was doing his spiel, something he's actually said multiple times when he said, look, I want to be in an art form that people really care about, unlike ballet, opera.
And I don't want to be working in ballet or opera or, things where it's like, hey, keep this thing alive, even though no one cares about this anymore. All respect to the ballet and opera people out there. I just lost 14 cents in viewership. But, damn, I just took shots for no reason.
That's not a shot. I hear what you're saying. Yeah. So
that's how he laid it out to the audience. And it's something that he has said before. Why is it turning into a thing now? Because my producer, Jesse Remedio, says this is a conspiracy and this is slander, that they are trying to torpedo him and his campaign.
Well, I do think that it is. I think it's intense backlash. Like, it's interesting you bring up Anne Hathaway. I feel that there are a lot of parallels. I feel that Timothée Chalamet, I mean, obviously, the way that women have been treated in Hollywood, their looks being scrutinized, has been really intense for a long time. I think that the way that the world is evolving, those expectations are kind of beginning to be put on young men in a lot of cases, especially a young man like Timothée Chalamet, who came up as kind of like for his boyish good looks. And over in recent years, you've seen people saying like very not so nice things about the way he's aging and growing up. And
wait, they are?
Yes. I mean, like, there's been a lot of like, there's been like a lot of viral. He looks the same. Like, I don't get it. Like, the internet is crazy.
Yeah.
But people are like, oh, he's like not as, I guess he's not as appealing as he was when he was in, I don't know, Lady Bird when he was like 17.
I was about to say.
I don't get it. But people, and I don't want to say that it's just people being like dismissive because of the way he looks, but I do think that it's a snowball effect of like fame itself, where people love you, they want to prop you up, especially in this internet age where you are exposed to a person significantly more than you would have been in like the studio era in the 1950s, when everything the audiences saw of a celebrity was very crafted and cultivated specifically to achieve a certain kind of look. We don't have that anymore. And someone like Timothée Chalamet, who is, like you said, an unabashed theater kid and always has been, has kind of had this perception put onto him by people who want him to be their dream celebrity, this little darling French boy who is beautiful and cultured.
All right, we're going to do the last thing before I let you go, because I can't not have you do predictions. And this is where we're going to nerd out. we're going to nerd out. And I'll offer mine as well. We'll check them off later, and you can do a TikTok that's like, Audie was super wrong. Ding, ding, ding.
Oh, no, I'm always wrong. Don't even worry.
Oh, really? Yeah, because we're not the weird Academy that thinks F1 was Best Picture. Like,
no,
guys,
exactly.
Settle down. Okay, so actor in a leading role. I have now I went from being like, oh, this is impossible, to Michael B. Jordan for Sinners, because of him winning a SAG. Voters, right, who looked at a performance where he played twins and thought, this was really well done and technical and good, and want to reward him for that. My backup is Wagner Moura for The Secret Agent, because I just wonder if all these other performances will split their vote.
That's not a bad guess, because honestly, the actor in a leading role category is truly insane this year. Like, I look at it and I'm just like, any one of these people.
Yes, Ethan Hawke for Blue Moon, Leonardo DiCaprio for One Battle After Another. I don't think anybody would be upset with any of these wins.
No, yeah. I mean, I think that Michael B. Jordan definitely has a really strong push, specifically from like his speech. As you said earlier, like, I do think it's very much about telling a story, telling a narrative. And I think Sinners has a great narrative this year.
But he looked surprised. I think people really were thinking that the Marty Supreme train had left the station, and even he, in receiving the award, looked shocked.
Yeah, well, I think that was such a beautiful moment to see, because just seeing the entire room celebrate, because it was so unexpected and such a, I don't want to say relief, but like just such a joyous moment to be like, wow, like this could really happen. It's not set in stone.
Yes.
Which is my favorite thing about
stone. Yes.
Yeah. And I do think that it's like, again, it's like I kind of fall into the category where I'm not great at predictions. I'm very bad.
Oh, no, we're forcing you still. Actor in a leading role. Just give me a name.
Okay. I mean, I guess, if I had to say who I thought was most likely to win, I would still probably say Timothée Chalamet. I don't know how likely that is, but it just has been, it wouldn't be my pick, but if I had to guess who is most likely, that's what I would maybe say. Okay. But I do think that this year, I mean, that's barely even a lead, though, because this year it could be Michael B. Jordan, it could be Leonardo DiCaprio or Ethan Hawke or Wagner Moura.
I'm cutting you off. You're drunk. I'm cutting you off.
Please do.
So the last one I want to get to, or the last two that I'm going to couple, is Best Film and Best Director. And the reason why I'm separating these out, and even I would add screenplay to this, sometimes when people don't want to give an award to the director of something, they give them something else, like screenplay or some other thing like that. I think the best version of this I saw was like Barbie, right? It's like Barbie versus Oppenheimer, and you have the director getting like a kind of adapted screenplay or some other kind of award that is still great, but is not the award.
Yeah.
And I think it will be weird if everybody wins all the things for Sinners and Ryan Coogler does not win Best Director, which is, I think, eluded a lot of Black filmmakers for sure. What do you think the Academy is going to do when it comes to Best Director and Best Film?
From what I understand, I think that the Best Director Oscar is one of the most coveted in the entire industry. And I think that a lot of directors want it even more than they want their film to win Best Picture. I also think that it's so much more competitive because since they expanded the category of Best Picture to have 10 films instead of 5, they now nominate 10 films for Best Picture, but only 5 directors get nominated for Best Director. So it's like a lot more competitive and a lot more difficult. I worry that this year, despite all of the high nominations, Sinners won't take as many home, and that will be disappointing to some people. It'll be disappointing to a lot of people. But I do think that there's been a general trend in recent years of like films getting more nominations in general, because despite the fact that there's 10 films nominated instead of 5 and it feels like there's a bigger scope, I feel like the Academy actually focuses in on more individual films instead of like spreading the love out to more films. So we have like a concentration of films that get like an increased amount of,
or a reality check, as I like to call it.
Yeah, exactly.
The 10 to me still feels like a lot, but
it's a lot. Like,
hilariously, Ryan Coogler is part of the reason, right? It was like, you guys got to expand what you think of as Best Picture. But here he is again, coming to them with something that was both commercially and critically respected. we haven't even mentioned Hamnet, Chloe Zhao, and there's many directors here that people respect and have good stories and campaigns, so to speak, going into it.
Yeah. So I think, Chloe Zhao, obviously one of the very few women to win a Best Director Oscar. Incredible. I love that she has that already. I don't think this year she's really likely to get another. I really think that they're going to give it to Paul Thomas Anderson. I really think One Battle Another is going to take the Best Director Oscar this year. But I do think that Ryan Coogler is the next in line should there be a shakeup. I think the Best Picture is probably going to go to One Battle, but I also would not be surprised at all if Sinners ended up being the surprise winner of the night.
Well, tell people where they can find you in case they want to follow up on your predictions.
Oh, yeah. Well, I am on a lot of the apps. You can find me on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube. My handle is JStoobs. I do film and media commentary and criticism there. I also have a podcast. Actually, my podcast recently just did an entire series on Oscar upsets. We talked about the year that Shakespeare in Love won, the Harvey Weinstein of it all, Brokeback Mountain over Crash, or the vice versa, unfortunately, that was a Freudian slip. But yeah, all of that stuff. And my podcast is called The Broad Perspective. So those are the places you can find me. And this has been a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
This has been great. I'm abroad. Get me on there. Somewhat. Yeah. Okay. I'm available, needless to say. All right. Megan Cruz, thank you so much for being with us. This was amazing.
This was so wonderful. And, I'm glad people are interested in the Oscars. So thank you so much for having me.